It's impossible to talk about modern life these days and our experiences, especially in 2022, without acknowledging the burnout, stress, grief, anxiety, imposter syndrome, and unhappiness that is being felt by so many. There's a collective desire, I think we all feel, to move away from the negative, from the anxiety, the burnout, the grief, the creative blocks, and create more of the really great things in life. Presence, creativity, joy, vision, bliss, and purpose. I know I'm not alone in wanting to find more simple, holistic ways of doing this, of creating the beautiful moments in life. That's why I'm so excited about today's guest, Aditya Jaykumar. Aditya is a certified breathwork practitioner and host of the My 7 Chakras podcast, a podcast with over 6 million downloads. He's worked with entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, Hollywood directors, and corporations, all with the goal to bring the numerous benefits of breathwork into the workplace. And today, we're bringing it to you. As ambitious goal-getters, it's super easy to keep moving the goalpost. You've run a half marathon, and on the next one, you want a personal best, and that never ends. If you're building a social media following, you hit 10,000 followers, and then you want 100,000. In your career or your business, you hit 6 figures and then you want more. You hit $1 million invested and then you want 2 million. I mean, it's just never ending. And we feel this too. I feel this in my life. We started with 1 rental property and then 10 and now over 50 or 60. I forget how many we even have today. It just keeps growing. Now, there's nothing wrong with being ambitious and having goals. And in fact, I love it. This podcast is all about goals and goal getting. And also, it's so important to recognize that while there's a lot of beauty in this moment, that there is a lot of beauty in this moment. And if we're in a constant hustle state, if we're constantly trying to get more, that no matter what we have, no matter what we achieve, we'll never truly get what we ultimately all want, which for most of us, the things that we want are actually to feel a sense of inner purpose, to feel peace, happiness, connection, fulfillment, and joy. If we continue to chase and chase and chase, there's no end. And while there can be some purpose in the chase on its own often comes up empty. In the last few years, we've all become intimately aware of how many things are outside of our control. Travel, gatherings, events, businesses, relationships, they've been so unpredictable over the last few years. And for this reason, as challenging as it is, I believe it's incredibly important that we can access and tap into deeper levels of healing, transformation, and satisfaction. What I found for myself in the last few years, and maybe you can relate to this, that when you can no longer be distracted by travel, events, exciting things, the business of life, it leaves space for what's really inside of you. And on the flip side of that, when you can no longer achieve your goals the way you imagined them, the business that you wanted, the events, the travel, whatever that is, then it's extra important to figure out how to still create that sense of fulfillment, joy, purpose, and bliss, even when it feels, quote, impossible and it feels outside of your control. My interview with Aditya was juicy. We had so many things to talk about. So we broke it into 3 episodes. This episode, you're going to hear about flow, why it's so important, and how you can add it to your life. You're going to learn about how you distinguish flow from presence, what the benefits are, including accessing intuition, feeling calm, and achieving a state of bliss. And yes, please to that. You're going to hear what happens when you're in flow, how you know you're in flow, how flow affects time, and how playfulness ties into all of this. You're also going to learn about the nervous system, its 2 states, and how to optimize your body's experience in both. Now, that's this episode. We've got 2 more coming up where Aditya explores and shares wisdom on some of the best modalities out there to help you create flow and achieve balance in your nervous system to reduce anxiety and create more creativity, fulfillment, and bliss in your life. You're going to learn how to calm your mind, relax your nervous system, and experience deep states of bliss. Aditya and I talk about everything from Qigong, flotation tanks, cold exposure, and more. And of course, we talked about breathwork, and you're even going to hear in the next episode where he leads us through a beautiful practice. So if you're new to breathwork or experienced, I know you're going to really enjoy it. Friend, this is a really good, juicy episode. The next couple are, because you're going to walk away with simple, practical, proven evidence-based techniques and methods to improve the quality of your life and notice a paradigm shift in how you look at and live your life. Also, it's impossible to talk about these simple strategies and ancient wisdom without getting deeply spiritual. So we're going there. We get really spiritual in this conversation. There's a chance if you're listening, depending on what stage of your journey you're at, that not everything is going to make sense right away. I was like that with Eckhart Tolle. Frankly, I'm still like that in some ways. When I read his book 15 years ago, it meant nothing to me. It was words on a page, and I couldn't understand what the hype was about it. I couldn't absorb or understand the text, let alone take away the life-changing experience that everyone else seemed to be taking away. Now, all these years later, I get a lot more of it. I can hear the message, I'm able to absorb, and the words really speak to me. And I realized that this is very common on my spiritual journey, and maybe it's the same for you. Maybe there's even a spiritual term for it, and I don't know it, but I believe this, that when you can only absorb the information that you're ready for, maybe the frequency, if you call it that, and the information, the awareness will come when you're ready for it. And not everyone is prepared for it, and that's okay. Just like I wasn't all those years ago, and just like not everyone is always prepared for an ocean dip. I feel you. It's real. Sometimes we have to hear a concept also several times to let it really land. And sometimes it takes years for it to be fully interpreted and understood at just the right moment. But I will say this, you don't have to understand, align with, or agree with everything that Aditya and I share. I mean, spoiler alert, that is true for everything in life. Don't forget. And that's okay. I know in our world right now, it seems like everything is either good or bad or pro or anti or left or right or true or false or aligned or not aligned. And that's just not the truth. There's so much gray, so much nuance in there, and so much that you can soak up even if you may not fully understand or agree with or believe in everything that we say. I believe that there'll be nuggets in here for you to take away. It's A-okay if not everything resonates. I just invite you to come to this episode and really all of your life ready to receive and ready to listen. And I really appreciate you listening and want you to know there's nothing wrong with you if not everything resonates. Nothing wrong with us for sharing if something doesn't make sense, and it doesn't mean you're not spiritual enough. It doesn't mean that what we're sharing doesn't have some truth or purpose in it. So if you're someone who struggles with trust, this might be a really good practice for you. All right, listen up, Golden Girl. In this episode, you're going to learn how to calm your mind, relax your nervous system, and experience deep states of bliss. Let's get it. Welcome to the Golden Girls podcast, where we believe you can have it all. I'm your host, Lisa Michaud, and I'm spilling tangible tips, goal-getting strategies, and real-life stories to inspire you to tackle your biggest dreams. You're a woman who knows you're made for more. Get ready to leave the excuses and self-doubt behind by being vulnerable, sharing your truth, and having honest conversations so you can succeed on your terms. Together, we'll set goals you'll actually achieve by staying motivated, having fun, and building a community of women empowering women. It's time to tap into your best self, get confident, and truly have it all. Golden Girl, let's dive in. Hello there, Golden Girls, and welcome to this episode of Golden Girls Podcast. I am so honored to be here with Aditya Jaykumar. Aditya, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Lisa.
Okay, I'm going to read out your bio, and it's pretty impressive, so just give me a minute here to get this out, because I think you have so many different modalities, so much different wisdom to share, and I want people to really understand who you are. So Aditya is a certified breathwork instructor, and he helps individuals, groups, and organizations reduce their stress and avoid burnout through breathing, movement, and meditation. And I know a lot of our listeners here struggle with these things, stress, burnout, your wisdom is going to be so helpful for them. Aditya's goal is to help bring the numerous benefits of breathwork into the workplace. Through evidence-based, science-backed techniques and methods, he helps employees feel more connected and present, resulting in increased productivity, enhanced creativity, and optimized well-being. Aditya has been invited to present workshops on breathwork at multiple organizations, including the City of Burnaby, the Project Management Institute, UBC, Uveda USA, and Coast Capital Credit Union. So, I mean, that says something right there, the fact that organizations of this caliber are tuning into breathwork. So, we're all going to listen up real good here. Aditya is also the host of My Seven Chakras podcast, where he chats with yoga instructors, mystics, healers, visionaries, and shamans about ancient wisdom for the modern mind. To date, the show has garnered over 6 million downloads with listeners in over 150 countries, and his show is consistently ranked among the top 50 alternative health podcasts on iTunes USA and Canada. I mean, super, super impressive, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lisa. That was one of the best intros I've listened to and my day has made. been made so far.
Thank you. And congratulations. I mean, hitting those kinds of downloads says a lot. It's a lot of work to have a podcast, but also says a lot about the impact you're making in people's lives. And I know that's really important to you. So thanks for the work you're doing with My 7 Chakras. And thanks for being here to share with us. So I also want to share really quickly the story of how Aditya and I met, because it was super, super unrelated to any of this. Because I think this story shares a lot about you and your humility and your desire to add value. So a couple of months ago, my husband Troy and I, we were going to host a real estate meetup. And our intention with the meetup was to bring people together who had different things to offer. And we really wanted to attract people who wanted to add value more than just take. And when we put out the announcement, of course, we had a lot of people interested in joining because these things just don't really exist. And a couple of people messaged me and they said they didn't have any real estate, but could they still come? And, we obviously kind of had to be a little bit discerning about how much space we had and how many people could come. And Aditya's message really stood out to me because Aditya didn't just say, hey, I want to come and I want to learn and I want to soak up everyone's knowledge. But you actually said, hey, I want to come. I don't know a lot, but I want to get started. And how can I help? And how can I add value? And your message right away stood out to us among, the dozens that we got of a lot of people who just wanted to come, but didn't realize that the other side of that is like, we just wanted people that could add value too, in whatever way that was. And so you were willing to come in whatever capacity. You were like, I will come. I will. And you were great. You actually helped us with the door, because if you live in an apartment building, you know what I'm talking about with the buzzer and all of that. You were so helpful in helping guide people in and knowing who is coming in. And I just think that speaks so much to who you are as a human and the humility. It says something when you're willing to do roles that other people are not willing to do. I was really always very attracted to that as a human, as someone who I think you see what it is to add value, and it's not about necessarily knowing everything, but it's about being willing to step up and do the thing, and not being too proud to ever do what it takes. So
yeah, 100%. I mean, there's a long story to that. So for your listeners might know that real estate, or where you belong, your home, is actually deeply connected to energetics. So the real estate or your home or the country that you belong to is connected to your root chakra. So if you don't have a home, or if you don't have real estate, or if you don't have a place where you can belong to, that can actually affect your sense of belonging. And that's why, for example, refugees who are uprooted from their home, they, over the same generation or even multiple generations, have a sense of trauma. And so me, on my personal journey, because I've been in Canada for about 7.5 years, recently got my citizenship as well, I was like, you know what, I do want to build my home and maybe own a home, as well as, and I've shared this with you as well, one of my visions is to have a nice home, a large home, and then have invite friends and family over, have nice dinners, right? Have cold plunges and saunas, and just have connection. And that's one of my values through my journaling that I learned, is I want to have an experience connection. And so in my journey, realized that I want to get into real estate. And then I noticed that out in the East, in Toronto and in Ontario, they've got a large community that all get-togethers and meetups. And I felt that wasn't happening a lot over here. So I had that at the back of my mind. And so when you posted that you're hosting, I was like, I'd love to be part of this experience. And I know that I don't have a lot to offer, and so I'm willing to offer anything as long as I'm part of this experience. So I'm glad that you responded to that invitation, and that was an amazing event, I must say. It was really well prepared, and it was not just like a meetup where it was just networking and you let the people decide who connects with whom, but there was a lot of structure to it, and I loved the question that you asked. So it was a real sort of mastermind, well put together event that I hope we have in the future as well. So thanks for hosting and thanks for inviting me as well. It was really nice.
Oh, our pleasure, and I'm sure we will do it again. Yes, yeah. I have had some experience with masterminds and creating it, so I'm glad that came out. And we really just wanted to add value. And I thank you for sharing that, and I think a great reminder for all of our listeners. We sometimes think like, oh, I don't have anything to offer, or who am I, or to do this. And I think just being willing to help out in any way, that's what gets you in the door. That's what gets you into conversation with people that have done things that you maybe haven't done. So I think that's a great lesson for everybody. So okay, we are going to talk about a lot of things. We're even going to probably break this into maybe 2, maybe 3 podcasts. We'll see how it goes. But let's start with flow, because that's what this is about. So can you describe, in your words, what you see as flow and, what it means to you? Why is that the place to even start?
Yeah. So flow, as some of your listeners might already know, this is a topic that a lot of research is being conducted each and every day. And one of the proponents of this concept of flow was Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. I spent a lot of time trying to pronounce his name correctly.
You nailed it. Can you spell it though? I feel like that's
no. I need some more practice. But so he was the.
We'll link it in the show notes.
But yeah, so he was the proponent behind the concept of flow, and I think the more we research and study into it, the more we know. And as you alluded to through our conversations before, there's a lot of Eastern concepts and practices that help us access the state of flow. But what really is it? And so from my understanding, and I term myself not as a master of flow, because there's so much to learn and so much to educate oneself about it, but I consider myself as an adventurer and as an inquirer, and someone who goes about conducting experiments on himself, so that I can find more about what works for me, so that I can share it with people and they can conduct their own experiments. So flow to me is when a person finds himself or herself in a state of deep absorption. Someone is immersed in a particular activity, and in that process experiences certain things that let the person know that he or she is in a state of flow. For example, the person might be a chess player who is playing the game of chess. Person might be somebody who's hiking. Like for example, yesterday I went to Dog Mountain, and we hiked for about an hour and a half, and I was so immersed and so absorbed into the process of hiking. And then when we went up, we saw the sun sort of almost setting, right? And it was a beautiful experience where you had snow on the mountain, but then there was like such a thick cloud cover. It felt as if you could actually walk on the clouds. The whole city was covered by, clouds. And so I was absorbed and I was immersed in that experience of enjoying nature. And it could be any activity at all. It could be like a rock climber. It could be somebody who's doing breath work. It could be like, for example, I love oil baths, and I do the oil bath when I'm just thinking about the sensory experience, the somatic experience of touching my own body. So basically, a flow is something when a person is really absorbed, really immersed in that activity that the person is doing.
Something that comes to my mind is like music, creating music, or really listening to music.
100%.
How do you distinguish? I'm curious about, like, are we in flow when we're watching Netflix or reading? Because is that the same thing? Because
that's a great question. I feel that to really understand what flow is, it would be helpful to understand what flow isn't. And so I'm just going to talk about what happens inside the body when we are experiencing a state of flow. So there's a part of the brain that's called the default mode network, DMN, and what it is basically is regions of the brain that help us form our sense of self, right? So when we're on and about, when we're shopping around the city, when we're driving maybe, or when we're doing some task where we're not completely focused, that is when the default mode network is really active, right? So think about that. When you're driving in the car, maybe when you're shopping, you're not really focused on buying something, but you're just walking across the aisles. You're looking around at what's available in the store. That's when the default mode network is active, and at this time, the brain is constantly thinking about the future, maybe like what you're going to make at night, who you're going to meet at night, whether or not you're with somebody at that point, or maybe thinking about the past, somebody that wronged you, somebody that hurt you, somebody that did not behave according to your expectations, right? Or somebody that rejected you. That happens automatically because, once again, the default mode network is responsible for creating our sense of self, and if we have a self, then we're not the future and we're not the past. So we're always trying to think about the past and the future. And also this default mode network is always comparing ourselves from somebody else. I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not rich enough, I'm not affluent or resourceful enough. And so this constant narrative keeps going on, and I'm sure people who are listening to this podcast are able to relate when they're experiencing these things, right? And this is not very constructive, especially if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a high performer, if you're a teacher, mother who really wants to do well at their work or at their job, or actually wants to actualize their life's purpose. And so what happens is there are certain activities, certain practices, especially breath work, that help us quieten or calm this default mode network. And so when our sense of self is quietened, what tends to happen is we feel much more connected with everything around the world. We feel much more connected with the past and the future because it all collapses in the present moment. We feel connected with people around us. We don't see them as adversarial. We see them as an aspect of ourselves. And then we realize that, what? Our universe is actually formed through our thoughts, through our actions, and we have so much more of a sense of control. And if you're able to spend more time with a quietened default mode network, we realize that we are able to get into a state of flow much more effectively. So that is one of the characteristics of flow, is the sense of time dilation. When we are not worried so much about the outcome of that drawing that we are doing, we're not worried about whether or not we're going to catch the sunset. We're just immersed in the work that we do, and we don't realize how time is escaping us because we become the work that we're doing. We're not the doer, we're the work and the person who's doing the work as well, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. It so resonates on many deep levels.
Yeah.
Number one being that I feel like as like a type A, always I've been really ambitious and quote busy for the vast majority of my life. And I think parenting is like the next level of it, because there's not only yourself and all the things you are trying to manage, but there's also another human or maybe 2 or 5 humans that you also have to figure out. And so I get like the DMN, you said, default mode network. Like I feel like my brain is in that zone a lot. Mm-hmm. And that's why I really wanted to, I'm very curious about breathwork and curious about more of this. And I know the first guided breathwork session that I did, let me be clear, I was the one being guided. It was just magical, because to this day, I could not tell you if it was 20 minutes or if it's 3 hours. Like I have no concept of it. It was almost like time bent.
Yeah.
And I think that's just so powerful. And it was like addictive, but in like a peaceful way. It was like, I want more of this. I want to have more of this in my life. And so, like I'm very curious to hear more about anything that can bring more flow to my life, because I know that being in that mode of like constantly thinking about what's next, or what did I just do, or what about this, or what about that, my body can no longer handle it. Like it's literally, I know it's making me sick in some ways. Yeah. I'm sure it's making other people too. I'm wondering how you distinguish between flow and presence, and if there is a difference. Because I think about like Eckhart Tolle and his teachings, a lot of this, which when I started reading it, I don't know, 15 years ago when it first came out, I understood none of it. And now, being 10, 15 years older, I get more of it. But he speaks a lot about presence, and I really enjoy listening to some of his audiobooks, and walking through nature and just seeing a flower and not thinking about it, not analyzing it, but just being in it. And I'm wondering, how do you see flow versus presence? Are they the same? Are they different? What are your thoughts?
I think presence is one of the skills that helps us trigger flow. Because if we are distracted, that's going to make it very difficult to enter that state of flow in the first place. And so any type of practice like mindfulness or meditation or breath work that helps us build the habit that to automatically trigger coming back to the present moment will help us, trigger flow. Because flow also has certain other characteristics. So the activity that you're doing has to have the the right level of challenge. If it's too easy, then it's difficult to be in the flow because it's easy to be distracted. It's so easy, you might as well do something else. But if it's too hard, then I think your sympathetic nervous system will trigger, because then you feel a level of anxiety or maybe stress because the task is so hard. So if you choose a task that has the right level of challenge, where you feel a certain level of control, at the same time you're able to let go of control because you trust the process, that's when you are able to experience flow. But it all starts with your being able to be present and tune off from the rest of the world. I feel that's where, like a practice of breathwork or meditation can really help, because you get better at being present, so to speak.
So good. I love that distinction.
Yeah.
Presence is a skill that you need in order to get into flow. And flow also has other characteristics. It makes me think too, not that we would go into flow for this, but it's interesting to note that flow is about doing something that is challenging, something that may be in what we perceive in our Western world to be productive or to be creative or to be some sort of an action or an outcome. But I feel like it blends kind of like that Western part of us that wants to do, achieve, create, and also the Eastern kind of philosophy or Eastern spirituality or knowledge of like these two things can actually go hand in hand when we're present for it and when we're open to the flow, and we're not doing it just in default. We don't have to say and like literally just the things that we do in default. The difference is doing them in a state of flow versus just doing them by default.
100%. And also I think when it comes to Eastern practices, I think for some reason just the more passive practices have become popular in the West. But actually I think flow is very much resonant with the Eastern philosophy as well, because one of the books of especially India, which is the most popular, is the Bhagavad Gita and the Mahabharata. And one of the things that Krishna said to Arjuna, so Krishna is one of the gods who has a conversation with Arjuna, and one thing he says is, do your work without thinking about the outcome, which is kind of if you think about it, flow, right? Because what he says in that conversation very rightly that can be applied to today as well. When you're doing any activity or project, there are so many things, so many factors that are out of your conscious control. And if you keep thinking about them, like what the government is going to do, what the group of people are going to do, whether your customers are not going to buy or not, the preferences keep changing, technology keeps changing, then you're always going to be out of flow, metaphorically. Whereas if you're just thinking about your work, right, your intelligence, your resources, your hard work, and what you can put into it, then I think you're going to have a better outcome. So...
Yeah, I hear that. I'm gonna have to get you to write down the names so I can put those books in the show notes as well for people who want to dive more. I can relate to that so much. I think in the last, I think maybe it's even just a question for anybody listening. It's just to think about what are as you're listening to Aditya talk, what are the things that put you in flow? And I know for myself, something that puts me in flow, speaking, coaching, facilitating, like that absolutely for me bends time. I can't always remember at the end of a live video or even at the end of a podcast, like, what did I say? What did we say? And I always go in with intention, but also I guess the word is flow. So I think it's an interesting thing for everyone listening to really think about, like, what are the things that get you into flow, that are challenging, that do keep you engaged, but don't move you into too much stress, and that allow you to create something or to bring your gifts out into existence without attachment to the outcome. And it's so interesting because I've really struggled, I think, in the last 2 years, especially when everything seems to continue to keep changing. And even like if we think about the last 5 years since I started my business, like everything keeps changing. It feels like a lot of people are struggling with, how do I respond to this? How do I respond to consumer needs and wants and desires and all these things? And it's just so interesting because I think I've noticed, and I've still got some room to lean into this. So I'm a student here for sure. But every time I just come back to me and go into like what feels right for me to speak about and create about and tap into that flow, it just releases so much of the pressure, and it's just so much more joyful. And believe, I see that it actually creates better outcomes in what I'm creating and business and life and all those things. So yeah. I love it. What gets you into flow?
There are many triggers. Like I said, I'm an experimenter, so I'm always trying to find an experiment with things that can potentially bring me into flow. And for me, it's like breathwork, right? Breathwork just has a way of using things like the breath itself, but also certain mantras. When you hum along a mantra or an affirmation, you trigger the vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in our body, extending from the brainstem. And so just sort of toning that vagus nerves helps you tap into parasympathetic. And that, for me, takes me into a state of flow because I'm not stressed out and I can really connect with my creative, my intuition, and my digestion and relax. So, just breath work and mantras can take me into flow. But the other thing that I really love, and I feel not enough people are practicing this, is Ayurvedic oil baths.
Yes. Okay, so you mentioned this to me. I haven't even looked it up yet. I know we're definitely going to dive into it because I'm very curious about this. But so stay tuned. We're going to talk about Ayurvedic oil baths, but this is one of the things that gets you into flow.
Yeah, Ayurvedic oil baths, as well as cold exposure, cold showers, right? Because once again, when I am getting into a cold shower, I cannot worry about the past. I cannot worry about what's going to happen in the future. I'm just worried about, well, physiologically, am I going to survive? My body's like, this is not normal. It's too cold, right? So I'm in the moment, worried about my breath, worried about the sensation of the cold droplets on my skin. That's it. I'm not worried about anything else. Then I come out of the cold shower, and that's when the body rewards me with endorphins and endocannabinoids and these feel-good sensations, and I'm feeling like this surge of energy and vibrance. And that also in a way is flow, because I'm just in the present moment, not really worried about what's going to happen in the future or what happened in the past. So that also, I feel cold shower, and I think you're also a fan of it.
I am. I know. I'm like holding back my excitement on it, and I'm sure everybody listening is like, okay, we get it, cold showers. But seriously, we come here almost evangelical about cold therapy for sure.
Yeah.
So I've heard you say a couple of things in terms of like the benefits of flow, and I just wanted to see if there's anything else. But I've heard you say, definitely more calm. More in tune with yourself. What else would you say are some of the benefits of being in flow?
Well, individually, obviously, there are benefits of flow, which is being able to get your work done, being able to get more quality work done, because you're able to tap into both hemispheres of your brain, not just the logical do. You get work done, but then what about your higher self, your collective consciousness that a lot of entrepreneurs and successful people draw from, right? You're drawing from your intuition, and when you're in a flow, you're able to do a lot of that. When you're in a flow, I think you're a very positive person because you just worried about your task, your future. You're not really bothered about, into somebody else's life and triggering other people. But think about what if, your whole family is into flow. You'll have less triggers, less relationship issues, less fights overall, right? Mm-hmm. What if your whole community is into flow? You'll have less people getting angry. It's more about open communication, open dialogue, and thinking about the whole. What if your whole city is into flow? What if your whole country is into flow, right? So there are so many overlapping benefits of us individually getting into a state of flow, but then helping other people also tap into what I like to call peak states of consciousness. Peak states, right? I think as human beings, we are meant to be more in these peak states because they remind us of where we are from. We are not just individual beings who are here to live our own separate soul journeys. We are part of the whole. We are part of the forests and the trees and the mountains and this. We are part of this beautiful world. And I think the more we remind ourselves, not just mentally, but whole body remembrance, it's good for us and good for our health also, because we're not putting our heart into so much of stress. We're not, wearing and tearing down our body.
Yeah, this might be a good time to talk about, the body, the impacts on the body, and the nervous system piece, because this is something I am just starting to learn about. So tell me all the things. But what I do know is I know this, which is going to sound kind of weird if you're not used to having these kinds of conversations. But I know I've recently realized in the last even just a couple weeks, how much my nervous system is very sensitive and very stressed, and how much power and how much everything changes when I can bring my nervous system back in. And I say that, and I literally have no idea what that even, I have no idea what that means. I have a couple things that I've noticed that help me. But I'm wondering if could you help fill out what I just said there?
Oh, yeah.
What I heard you talk about the vagus system, then parasympathetic nervous system. Can you kind of give us an overview on that and help bring some actual science and an explanation to what I just said?
Yeah, and I myself, I'm educating myself each and every day and experimenting and finding out, right? And part of what we do is logical, abstract, reading peer-reviewed reports and what the doctors are saying, what the researchers are saying. But part of it is also intuitive. If I feel it, if I sense it, then it is true. And I think we discount the intuitive part sometimes, which is why, as we were talking earlier this podcast, I bought myself a Shungite pyramid, which I keep in my pocket all the time. I also have a Shungite necklace, which has the flower of life, sacred geometry on my chest at all time. Because intuitively, I have sensed that the EMF level, not just at my home, but collectively has increased. And that is true as well. With 5G coming on board, with people having overall more devices that you're wearing, a Bluetooth headset and a phone and the laptop, maybe 2 laptops if you have a larger family, and nowadays you have electronics in the car as well. So we can never escape being with these electronics, and I feel that is putting an undue pressure on our nervous system at the cellular level as well, right? And the way that we survive, the way that we create energy is in our mitochondria. And the mitochondria need 2 things in order to produce the energy that is needed for us to survive and thrive, which is glucose and oxygen, right? And so the oxygen part is the breath work. The glucose part, and I see you have so many books on the importance of having good nutrition, right? But then if through EMF and all these different radiations, if our mitochondria itself is getting damaged, then our ability to produce energy is also being limited, right?
I love how you bring intuition and law and logic and science, all these things together. I think that's what's really vital for all of us. So I really appreciate that in you, how you're able to ground those 2 things. And I think we lose when we only talk about one side. We lose the perspective. We lose out. We miss out on so much beautiful gain that we can have from it. So I so appreciate that.
Yeah.
So tell me more about the nervous system. So, because I'm kind of like you. I know that this is a problem for me, but I don't even know what it means.
Yeah. To put it simply, we've got the sympathetic branch of the nervous system, and we've got the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system. Each one of them plays a role in our evolution and development overall, right? So the sympathetic nervous system is our fight or flight and awakened alert state, and the parasympathetic is the rest and digest, the more relaxed state. So for example, when our ancestors were maybe in the jungle, or maybe in the savannah, or maybe the grasslands, when we were walking around enjoying our day, suddenly we hear a brush in the woods, or we know something is wrong. Maybe there's a predator or a saber-toothed tiger, or maybe a lion that is there. That's when our instinctive sympathetic dominant branch would take over, and then we would either fight that predator, maybe kill that orangutan, or maybe escape from that place. Hopefully, if we did survive and we were alive, then automatically the sympathetic would calm down, go to sleep, and the parasympathetic would come on, because guess what? Yes, we do need to survive, but also we need to digest our food, we need to think intuitively, and we need to relax. But these days what's happening is we don't have that metaphorical bear in front of us, unless you live in North Vancouver. but we're constantly getting these notifications and reminders that our bills are due, or maybe emails from the work that you need to come to work, or maybe deadlines in terms of projects, or maybe we're working on a business, on an entrepreneurial project, and maybe we don't get the permits from the government on time, right? And so our whole project, we're carrying on the mortgage, is getting delayed. So we have so much stressors that are not necessarily physical. And what that means is our body is constantly in a state of sympathetic dominance, which is sort of like putting your gas pedal on the accelerator all the time. It's good, you drive fast, but then your body is taking a toll in terms of your health, and that affects your longevity. We start looking older much more earlier. So what is the solution then? Well, we need to go in there and take our foot off of that pedal using these practices, so that we spend more time on parasympathetic, because the body is a true healer, as you might agree. The body knows how to heal. We don't need to intervene and put all these different pills and injections all the time. There's a time and place for that, but for the most part, the body knows how to heal. And if we give the right food and the right oxygen and the right conditions that are conducive to healing, the body will miraculously reciprocate and heal. So that is where the parasympathetic and the sympathetic branches come into play.
Amazing. Thank you for that. So good. So good. I mean, I can resonate with that so deeply. And I think modern life, I mean, the amount of I don't even have notifications on my phone, but imagine if all the text messages, all the emails, all of the notifications on social media. I mean, that in itself is a lot. And if we then as a parent, like, oh my gosh, my kid is like constantly like, Mom, I need this, Mom, I need that. And I don't know what the science actually says on, I mean, there must be science on this, because like biologically we're hardwired for our children, right? We're hardwired for, I remember actually when my daughter was young and she would scream, like I could physiologically feel it in certain areas, like my body would hurt when she would scream at a certain level of when she was very angry baby, and in those moments. And now too, like when she's upset, when she's tantruming, like it feels like I could feel a physiological response to that. And that is what that's kind of what I picked up on, is being like, oh yeah, my nervous system literally is like, I can't handle it.
Quick observation to that. And I totally agree, I think right now, maybe like 5 years back more so, sometimes what tends to happen is the whole responsibility and the stress of parenting is put on the mother. Whereas in the past, when we used to live in villages and collectives, sometimes the grandfather would take over. Sometimes the grandmother would take over. Sometimes the father would take over. Sometimes the older brother or older sister would take over, where the mother would go and, spend some time out in nature and recuperate and heal. But because we are living in nuclear families these days, maybe there's more of a stressor on the mom. And like you put it, it's like a whole body stress, right? And I think one good trend is nowadays there's a paternity leave concept, where the father can also take leave for that period, so that at least the stress will be distributed between two parents rather than, just on the mom, right?
Yeah.
So it's a good trend in that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I haven't, I can't tell you how much I've realized, there's a lot of freedom that comes from having a nuclear family, like not living in multi-generational households and having all those people. And I think that's great too. But also, it's really hard. Yeah. And I know myself and lots of other friends and moms, like we've, especially in the last couple of years, have really been talking more and more about how great would it be to have a community, to actually have a village, because I don't think we're meant to do it alone. I really don't believe that we're meant to do it alone. And as I'm someone who, you may or may not know, my husband works away for at least 2 weeks a month. And so I'm on my own a lot. And I call myself a solo parent, but for the people that are single parents and having to do that all the time, especially when you don't have those support systems, like I don't know how you do it, because I know I really struggle to do it. And I can really feel my nervous system literally like unable to handle all of it. And so, we had a guest, Teresa Lilupavia, I can't remember what episode number, about grief. And we talked a little bit about, somatic work in terms of grief. And one of the things that she shared, and I've worked with her quite a few over the last couple of years, but like shaking, like literally sometimes I just have to shake it out and like let it out. And sometimes I've just recently started screaming, which is actually amazing, and I highly recommend it. Yeah. But yeah, like I can relate to what you're saying, and it's so interesting because I think also probably maybe the last generation, and even several generations back, probably like we didn't even hold the space for our children to have the tantrums. We just told our kids to stop it, or go in the bedroom if you're going to be like that, or it's not okay to cry, or tell them you're okay, or stop. You don't deserve, or like you don't get to watch TV if you don't stop crying now, or stop screaming, or bribing and shaming and guilting and all those kind of. I don't know how do I like all of our parents were doing the best, but that's kind of what a lot of us were raised with, was these kinds of parenting techniques where there wasn't even a space for those kinds of experiences for our children. And I think what I love is that a lot of the parents are moving more into conscious parenting and moving more into giving the space for our kids to be themselves, to tantrum, not to be destructive or hurt people or anything like that, but to move through their emotions. But I think a piece that's been missing for me, and I wonder if this resonates with anybody else listening, and I think this is maybe a place for like future episodes, maybe future workshops. We'll see, Aditya. But like I think the other part that's missing then is we know how to hold that space for our children, or we're learning how to do that. But then we also need to make sure that we have the support, and that we have the tools, the resources, the time, and the consistency with our own practices to heal our nervous system, so that we can also hold space for them and ourselves.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think, like that quote goes, right? The healer needs the healing the most. And, right, like the doctor, like where does the doctor go to, right?
Yeah.
The doctor or the healer needs to heal themselves perhaps more, so that you can take on the pressure, maybe the stressors of holding space for somebody else. Because you're not just holding space, right? You're also taking on some of that energy. When you're doing a breathwork session, if the person is angry or sad or resenting something, you can't help, because it's all energy, to take on some of that. And some people, especially like maybe like if you're doing a massage, right, you feel like a pain in your stomach, or maybe you feel they feel a pain in their shoulders. Why? Because that pain that was there in that person is now coming onto them. Energy cannot be destroyed. It has to move from one body to the other. And it's true. So that's why, to your point, everyone needs to find a way or a technique or a community that can help them unload some of that stress.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I feel that as a parent. I feel that also as a coach. Do you notice that as in the work that you do, that you also need to be extra conscious on your healing?
Oh yeah, 100%. I don't do a lot of like body work. Mine is more remote, but even with remote, because energy is quantum in nature, right? I just feel the need to, just disconnect. Like in an ideal scenario, and that was one of the journals that I did, or maybe exploration of my vision. My ideal vision is to do my breathwork sessions, because I do breathwork sessions on Zoom every Sunday morning. So do that, right? And then just go to the mountains, like I did yesterday, snowshoeing, right? Because that's the ideal way to offer space and then heal yourself, right? Nature is the ultimate healer. It's a very passive form of healing, because you're just walking up the mountain, but it does heal you. It helps you relax, and it helps you experience and take in more of what nature has to offer, like a sunset or a sunrise.
Yeah, I agree with that. So good. Well, I wanted to just say one more thing too. One of the things that you spoke to is like being able to heal ourselves. And, I appreciate what you said there. I appreciate, we're not saying that it's never okay to get any kind of treatment, or like that you never need to see a doctor or have a team of, naturopath, dentists, who are chiropractor, whatever that looks like. That's not what we're saying at all. But it was really interesting that you said that, because one of the messages that came through when I did my breathwork session, what I really felt, it was super cool, was my own power in being able to heal myself, and recognizing like when I could notice my body and when I knew it, I could actually move breath and move energy and just like, and like feel myself feeling better. And it's been really cool because then I'm able to take that knowledge, that wisdom for myself, and then I'm able to like give that information to my physiotherapist when we're working on healing a few things with my feet, and I'm able to take that to my chiropractor, helps me with headaches, and like it's just so interesting like how I think we've outsourced, and I know I talked about this on a couple episodes with Danielle Dame about our healing our relationship with food, but we've outsourced so much of our wisdom to the experts. And I think there's so much power in bringing this back. And I wonder if, I feel like for me, you know, having my nervous system, having these red flags is a great reminder for me to stop outsourcing that power and to bring it back to me and to remind me that I can heal not everything, but I can heal a lot of things in myself. And that I need to, you know, stop outsourcing it all and start insourcing some of that healing.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's a bold statement for me to make as well, is that it's time, you know, we've come to a time in our human consciousness where we need to take control of our own health. You know, we cannot really fully depend on the doctor or whoever we're working with. Why? Because yes, they are here to help, but at the end of the day, we're in full control of the journey. Right now, we have access to peer-reviewed reports. We have YouTube, and people dismiss YouTube, but the truth is, YouTube is just a medium. There's good content there. There's not so good content there, right? It's just like consciousness. But you have reports, you have articles, you have really good quality stuff online, which means that when the patient steps into the doctor's clinic, he or she knows what questions to ask, and when the person might not be providing instructions and advice that are in their interest. And this, for me, a sign of a good doctor is someone that says, that's amazing, I'm so glad that you're empowered and you know what you're getting into. A sign of a not so good doctor is someone who is not empathic, and you see that a lot, right? I know exactly what I'm doing, I know better than you. Who has the stethoscope around their neck, right? Someone who dismisses questions and does not allow for the patients to explore and to at least voice their concerns. And that's the sign of a not. You come across that a lot, right? It's just not about the knowledge that the doctor has, but it's all about the questions that they ask and the care that they provide, right?
I mean, right now we're seeing this definitely, like the health is, we see that huge. I just think that's so true though with everything. Like think about leaders, you know, think about the managers that you have, which ones listen to you and which ones don't, right? Which one, like who attaches to titles and degrees, who attaches to status, who attaches to their own ego of knowing everything versus who doesn't. I mean, even like, I bet you there's certain podcast hosts that would be like, this is what you're going to say, this is what you're not going to say, I control that, you know what I mean? Like, I think that exists in every realm. I think we're seeing it on a really interesting scale, and it's been there for a long time in the healthcare industry for sure. I think there's some room for us a lot of room for us to move back to co-creating with patients and making empowered decisions, all those things for sure. But I think it's like all around us, right? Yeah. Even just like what I said about the parent, the idea that the parent always knows best. Yeah. When that's not true. Like the child has their own experiences, their own truth, and their own journey that they're here on, and we're not just there to tell them everything. But like, I think it's a paradigm shift, and I think I think we're making the turn as a collective. It's it's painful, it's slow, it's we want it to happen faster, but I think it's happening.
Oh yeah, I think change is happening so quickly, right? I think it is really exponentially driven because of technology, because of the internet, because of the speed at which we're receiving information. Change is just exponential, right? One day we're talking about a new browser, then you have NFTs, and then you've got blockchain, you've got DeFi, and all these technologies are affecting everything that we do, including real estate. So it's crazy that I think as human beings, we're not designed to experience so quick changes. Our nervous system is not designed to go through so much of information, and that's why I think we're overloaded. Is that at the end of the day, we're still cavemen and cavewomen, or we're still paleo, so to speak, right? And so if we take some time and intention to see whether our food is designed for our what do you call that, bio or our bodies, or whether
like our own microbiome or our own biology. There's exactly. Yeah, so good, so good. Okay, before we wrap up this kind of part of the episode, heard you speak about bliss and about playfulness. How does that tie into what we're talking here around flow and nervous system? Where do bliss and playfulness fit in?
Well, I think that's something I try to practice. And sometimes I forget it also, but I try to practice it from time to time, right? If you see some of the more ascended masters, they're always in a state of bliss. They're always laughing, always smiling. They don't take life too seriously, right? And there's actually a compound that I think that your body produces when you smoke weed. That's called anandamide.
Okay.
Ananda means bliss.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in yoga, there's a saying called Satchitananda. Sat means truth, Chit means consciousness, Ananda means bliss or joy. And what it's trying to say is that the true nature of the universe is joy, is bliss. And we are images of nature, so the true nature of us is also bliss. Because what's the point of being sad and depressed and grieved, and because we live short lives, and it is for the best of us to be in a blissed state all the time. I know that's not easy, but if we train our nervous system and our consciousness and our body to be in that bliss state, what we'll notice through the law of attraction, we'll start attracting more bliss into our own lives, right? And so to answer your question, what's the other word you said? Bliss, and what is it?
Playfulness.
Playfulness, yeah. And so I think where playfulness comes in is if you see a child playing PS5, PS4, right? They're always they love it so much. They love the game, right? And they play the game, and then the game gets over, or maybe their character dies, but then they're like, okay, let me restart. Let me try again. Let me play the game once again, right? And so, because so many things in our lives are out of our control, if we add a little bit of playfulness and focus on the process rather than getting too attached to the results, maybe we'll have better results in the first place. We enjoy the process. We enjoy the challenges and the struggles and the difficulties that come with entrepreneurship and with parenthood and with life in general. And we don't take it so seriously. We're like, okay, sure, we rub the dust off our shoulders and we start again. I wrote an article the other day, and I came up with the concept of the opportunity to fail, or the gift of failing. I think a lot of countries, you're not even allowed, maybe as an immigrant, to start a business. Like, I don't think I can just go into America and start a business, but at least Canada you can. And so in doing so, I get the gift of failing. It's like, sure, I failed. Maybe the offer was not right. Maybe the market was not right. Maybe my approach was not right. Maybe this. So in failing, I think you get to know the data. You see what went wrong, what went right. And the good part is that you can wake another day and try again. And I think that's where playfulness comes into play. And that is one of the components of being in flow, is playfulness. So that you look at life as a game, and rather than taking it so seriously, and if you have a failure, you're depressed and sad and things, and that prevents you from starting once again. And the truth is, if you look at all the successful entrepreneurs or millionaires, right, they've tried so many times that they've lost count of how many times they've failed, but they forgot about that, because the audience, or the city, or whoever you're working with, they don't care how many times you failed, as long as you've succeeded in the end. That's it, right? So I think that's where the perspective comes into play, of being in a blissful state all the time through these practices, through these activities, and also not being too serious about the thing that you're doing. I mean, you need to be professional, you need to do a good job, but just don't be so serious about the end outcome. That's what I take from it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, that's great. As you were speaking, it just spoke right to me, because that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate, with this podcast and the coaching that I do, and is that I just see so many people so hard on themselves about failure. And, I can call myself a goal setting expert, but within that, it's like, it's not about SMART goals. It's like the hardest parts are first of all, even having the wisdom to tap into what you actually want.
Yeah.
Because so often we see like what everybody else wants or what other people think we should do.
Yeah.
Or even what we genuinely thought we should do 3 years ago, maybe different than what we need today.
Right.
So like first part is like that tapping into what you actually want and being in integrity with that. And then having the courage to put yourself out there when you might really fail. And then all these pieces along the way where you might fail and you get in your own way.
Yeah.
I love, I think there's so many different ways to access this, there's, some people respond really well to listening to inspiring stories or to reading biographies or, working with these mentors or podcasts or whatever that is. And that's why I really, really appreciate having these kinds of conversation around the spiritual pieces as well, because these are other access points or other ways that we can other modalities that we can try and integrate into our lives to allow us to really listen to what we really want and allow us to have the confidence to have that playfulness when it comes to a goal or a dream or something we want to create or achieve in our lives, and allows us to continue even when it's hard and even when our brain might be saying, but what about this and what about that and what about this person, what is this person thinking, and how do we handle 50,000 comments or messages or people, whatever that is, like the stresses that will and the challenges that will inevitably come from whatever from life, and B, especially when you're trying to do something exceptional or extraordinary. So I see this like such a correlation with everything that you're saying, and there's both like kind of the more like left brain logical tools you can kind of do, but then also like the right brain intuitive piece, and also like the Western, Gantt charts. And you can see my, I've got like lists of like I got to fail 100 times, and I've got Gantt charts and opportunity radars in my office. I've got these tools too, but I also feel like it's so important to learn about these Eastern, more traditionally Eastern tools that are also really powerful and really helpful to help us move through those blocks that come when we are trying to live a life that is joyful, that is purposeful, that is meaningful and successful, whatever your definition is.
100%. And if I may say this, you see these 30 under 30 or maybe 20 under 20, right, of young people, or maybe as young professionals who have done this and done that. I've seen success.
Are you gonna dash my hopes for a 40 under 40?
No, I'm getting to that. I'm saying you see all these things, right? And that's inspiring. But I think what is more inspiring is when somebody who is 40 or 50 or even 60 or even 70, right, go through all the struggles and all the societal expectations and even then persist and succeed. I feel that's not spoken about enough. Right? Because the thing is that the older you grow, the more obstacles you come in your path. And most of the obstacles are in your mind itself, right? About our own self-creative narratives or expectations of when we should be successful or not. And I think success could be money, or it could be like when you want to getting married, or when, like we have our own definitions, largely through evolution. and a lot of these rules are not don't make sense in our modern world, but we have those rules, self-created narratives, right? And so they are sort of in a way hold us back from even trying in the first place. So I get very excited and very inspired when I see people who are 40 or maybe 50 or even 60, 70 as well, who see success, because that means that they've not given up, and that means that they've seen way more failures than somebody who is 30. Because the truth is, maybe you're 30, and I'm not trying to dismiss their success at all. But when you're 30, maybe people, give you support, maybe you get some grants, you have some uncle or auntie who's helped you, you get some mentorship from somebody who's elderly, who's a mentor, who's seen so many arrows in their backs, and they know all the challenges, and maybe you see success, right? And obviously, their success is very justified. But sometimes, when you're 40 or 50, you don't get those grants. You don't get that support. There's no mentor who's here to help you. Right? There are limited resources for people who are comparatively older, because society expects you to be already successful by then. Do you know what I mean?
I do. And like I have a post, I'm not going to pull it up right now because I want to just be in this moment, but like I so agree with this. I created a post, it must have been like a couple of years ago. But it's a trend that I've absolutely seen, and it is the fact that like that people's excuses of being, or I call it, I'm using the word excuses here slightly facetiously here to get the point across here. It could also be mindset, limiting beliefs, lack of, like a lot of pieces here. But I see this trend where so many people at 20 are like, well, I'll start the business like after I have some money saved up, or like I'm too young. But like too young then later becomes too old. It's like, well, now I have 5-10 years of my career under my belt, or now I have some money and I don't want to risk and I don't want to lose it.
That's true.
And so I like literally have seen this with people, so many people that I know, and I'm 35 right now. So many friends that I know that have kept, right after university, they were like, oh, I do want to travel, but I'm going to work for a couple years. And then now, 35, 40, 45, and they still haven't traveled because now they have a mortgage and now they have kids, and now they've actually, it's really hard to like leave the workforce and come back to it. And so I think it is really important to be conscious of that. And like we can always find the excuse, and our excuses of being not knowing enough then become our excuses of like, we almost know too much, or our excuses of not having enough experience then become, well, I have too much experience in this other avenue for me to go back on it. And we almost like our own, I use the word of like, we have some success in terms of like, I've already got some success, and we become attached to that. Like, I don't want to lose this status that I have, or earn less money that I have, or I now have dependents and I have a mortgage, or I have 2 mortgages, or I have this business that I'm responsible for these people's food on their table, and now I don't want to shift gears and do something different because I don't want to back to them. So I agree. I think there's we need to healthily appreciate both of those situations, which I think our society does a good job of, like the 30 under 30 or 20 under 20. And I think we can do a better job of looking at the other side too, because I think the excuses are real, the limiting beliefs. So we can have reasons to not pursue what we want to do at any age in life. And it's not when you do it, it's that you did it that we should be celebrating and honoring and respecting.
Exactly.
Cool. Okay, so we just talked about flow. We talked about presence, the nervous system, what it feels like, why it matters, how it makes such a difference, creating bliss, creating calm, being more present, accessing our intuition, being able to be more creative, more productive in the end, and being joyful, aligned, crushing our goals, all the things. We're going to hit pause right here, and we're going to create another episode all about the different modalities to actually do this. So Aditya, you're going to share some of your best practices. I'm going to ask some really great naive newbie questions on them. We're going to talk about breathwork, flotation tanks, Qigong, Vedanta, which is something I know nothing about, so I'm very excited about that one. We're going to talk about cold and more. So thank you so much, Aditya, for sharing all of this with us, getting us started, getting us hooked on this. And thank you everyone for listening, and get ready for the next episode to find out how to actually dive into all these modalities.
Woohoo!
Thank you so much for listening. If something spoke to you, send me a message by sharing this episode and tagging me on social media. If you know someone who would love to hear this episode, please share it with them too. Because I love surprises, make sure you subscribe to the Goalden Girls podcast today. It's the only way to find out about bonus surprise episodes and make sure you don't miss a single beat on your golden journey. Thanks again for listening, and I will talk to you in the next episode of the Goalden Girls podcast.